There's some structural tailwinds that we think are just, particularly in sitting in kind of a U.S. allocator seat, that make Japan a more attractive environment than it has been. I think there's certainly been some changes in, shareholder friendliness, particularly, and you look at what's happening with the yen. We do think that valuations, too, they're obviously attractive, but they're attractive with a catalyst, as I mentioned. So that's an area that we just think is probably a little bit more attractive, maybe not so much on the economic growth side, but you combine changes in policy from a monetary perspective, a re-emphasis on shareholder value over the last, 5 to 7 years or so, and then this idea of, valuations. And I think that looks a lot more attractive to us than potentially Europe, where there's pockets of opportunity, but we also see, some challenges, particularly in the stickiness of inflation. And as I mentioned, household interest rates and the pain of that households are experiencing in Europe.
Shannon, what do you think we will learn from Apple when it releases their earnings as a lens on this entire cyclicality, as a lens on China valuation, and broadly, what do you think is going to tell us about tech sector positioning?
I think the implication, the inference from the market is that it's going to answer all those questions for us. And I think that's probably putting a little bit too much emphasis on one company. There are two, kind of major factors that you look at Apple. I mean, they are, a global and perhaps the global consumer brand. And they sell their products at, fairly high selling prices. So if you think about average selling prices being, sort of on the higher end, if you think about that global branding, people are really looking at it in terms of what is the strength of the consumer and how much are they digesting. There is a look through, obviously, to the holiday season. That could potentially be a preemptive look at the holiday season here in the United States. But I think more importantly, you asked about China. I think that remains an overhang, if you will, for Apple, despite the fact that they're seeing, continued services revenue growth. And really a monetization of an installed base that really is second to none. If you think about the sheer numbers of handsets that are in people's pockets. So I think that the market might be overemphasizing Apple, and that's probably because of its outsized position in the S&P 500. But we will get a good read through on the holiday season here in the United States, potentially China. And then, is the high-end consumer starting to crack a little bit in the face of this continued high-price basket with inflation coming down, but not coming down particularly quickly?